Good evening, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone, wherever you're joining in from. We are here to talk about real estate as a circular economy powerhouse. Hi, my name is Narasimhan. I am Managing Director of Grid Technology Singapore and Director in PlaySolar Systems Private Limited in India. I'm ably joined by Rajesh Solanki, who's CEO of Energos, and Kiran Murthi, the CEO of GrowthFile, and Naren, Senior Director in his own consulting firm, Infinitive. So we're here to talk about circular economy. What does circular economy mean to you from an end consumer, right? So it is all about designing out waste, number one, right? And secondly, keeping the materials in circulation, right? And thirdly, in regenerating natural ecosystem, right? So these three are key elements of circular economy, and my friend Naren is here to talk about all of that. Then we will spend a little bit of time with Rajesh on the energy impact of real estate sector, need to focus on energy efficiency, and several solutions that Energos has come up with in this region, this area. And then thirdly, I myself will talk about Chill and what we are doing in terms of the massive potential for energy generation through solar, as well as energy trading of excess energy. Right. So these are areas that I will talk about. And then lastly, we will talk with Kiran, who will give us a very brief understanding of GrowthFile and facility management systems and how we can tie this all together. And we'll end with a Q&A session along with the panel where we will discuss what this all means for you. And again, thank you very much for joining in and hope you have a great amount of fun in this talk as much as we had. Thank you. Let us now quickly move on to the first session for the day, uh, co-hosted by Naren Kolary, who's the co-founder and head business advisory at Infinitive, Infinity Perspectives Research and Advisory Private Limited. He has over 10 years of management and leadership experience in business development, strategy, operations across the fields of oil and gas, photovoltaics, sustainability, and technology. He has worked with both startups and large companies in the US, Singapore, and India to formulate successful go to market strategies, develop new business models of operation, and achieve multiples of revenue growth. At Infinitive, Naren is working with prominent bilateral organizations to accelerate the transition to a circular economy through capacity building, ecosystem development, and business advisory services with a focus on circular innovation. Now, let's welcome aboard Naren Kolary from Infinitive.
Thank you for that introduction, Max, and I really appreciate UNISU for putting together this much-needed platform for a conversation to evolve around the future of real estate. While conversation around sustainability and renewable energy has been steadily progressing over the last few years, Infinitive believes that the concept of the circular economy presents a broader and more comprehensive model to reduce the environmental impact of real estate. The core concept of the circular economy is to transition from the current linear economy model of a take, make, dispose format into one that is capable of retaining significantly more economic value. In the linear model, even though there is great value ascribed to the resources and materials involved in production, there are little to no efforts involved in retaining that value over a longer time period. The circular economy consists of three basic principles to conserve that economic value. The first of which is designing out waste and pollution. The second is keeping those materials and resources in circulation for as long as is practically possible. And the third is to regenerate natural systems. Now, the real estate industry is actually one of the world's largest consumers of natural resources and produces a significant quantity of waste, both through the building and construction phase, as well as the energy and materials needed to continually maintain their operations and manage their facilities. Just to put some numbers to this impact, buildings account for about 6% of global greenhouse gas emissions, just in terms of the embodied carbon in the materials. And the generation of electricity and heat for these buildings around the world contribute to even more. It's 25% of the global greenhouse gas emissions, as per IPCC. So now Accenture describes 5 circular models that could capture this additional value from the circular economy compared to the traditional linear or take, make, dispose model. First of which is alternative materials and design, or circular supplies or inputs. Then there's sharing platforms, products as a services, product use extensions through models like repair, remanufacturing, and refurbishing. And of course, at the end of the product's life, resource recovery from those materials directly as well. Now, between the construction phase and operational stages of the real estate industry, these models present various points of application across the entire value chain. So if you look at the construction phase, sand and steel are some of the most basic resources that are consumed in the building and construction industry, and especially in huge volumes. Exploring material alternatives to these finite resources, as well as looking at repurposing the immense amount of material that currently goes to waste either at the end of the building's life or is waste during its construction phase, will go a long way towards reducing the industry's emissions footprint. From a design point of view, modular construction is a model that is quickly gaining traction, both for the advantages presented by the decoupling of the assembly phase from the limitations of the construction site, as well as the flexibility that modularity allows for. Modular designs also enable faster construction times in addition to the minimizing waste material. Now, this model is even more relevant in the dense urban environment, where a big majority of upcoming construction activity is expected to happen. Now, the design phase also has implications on the ease of material recovery at the end of a building's useful life. Buildings that are designed for easy disassembly enable a much higher recovery rate for the basic raw materials that we were talking about earlier. Technology also has a significant role to play in this phase. Digital twins for smart buildings is a concept that is taking off recently and is covered elsewhere in several other Reconnect sessions. And that same technology powers so-called material passports for products and buildings that documents the valuable resources embedded in these products and buildings in detail for end-of-life recovery. And the operational phase of real estate also provides a significant opportunity for circularity, primarily through product as a service business models and product life extension. One of the earliest product as a service models was initiated in the B2B world by Philips when it offered lighting as a service for its commercial customers instead of an outright purchase model. Pay-as-you-go solutions have since become a lot more popular across several sectors, including obviously the OpEx model employed by the rooftop solar industry. However, I think we've barely scratched the surface when it comes to the servitization of these traditional models when you look at areas like HVAC, furniture, and electronics, especially for the real estate industry. Now, bringing all this together in a great example, the Park 2020 facility in Netherlands illustrates how circular principles can benefit a real estate facility. Guided by cradle-to-cradle design principles, the natural ecosystem in this park is regenerated through interconnected green spaces placed throughout the park. Wastewater is treated and reused centrally in a closed-loop system, and the waste heat is also utilized from this process into the hotels in the park. The design of the buildings also takes into account the path of the sun in order to conserve energy, and also includes green roofs incorporating PV for carbon-free generation of energy through solar in the design of the buildings themselves. Hopefully, the future of the real estate industry will be seeing more such projects that will incorporate circular principles. Thank you.
Wow, Naren, thank you very much. That was a wonderful overview on circular economy. I hope you all enjoyed it. I think the highlight of that, in my belief, was that there's already existential proof of companies and real estate developers have evolved to utilize circular economy, which is great, and I think that's a great example to follow. Next up, we have Mr. Rajesh Solanki, a good friend of mine. He's a repeat entrepreneur, founder of and CEO of Energos. He has experience in building cross-border tech businesses with global team building and IP creation. He started Energos with a vision to form a service which can share data, share learnings, and even share energy in the evolving distributed energy grid. Welcome aboard, Rajesh Solanki. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rajesh Solanki, founder and CEO of Energos. Energos is developing an end-to-end platform where consumers and sellers of energy can buy, sell, and provide value-added services to one another. More than ever before, the world has now committed itself to fully transition our energy system from centralized power plants to one that has several prosumers who not only consume electricity but also produce and store it. With more and more renewables and electric vehicles coming up, power is not just greener but is more distributed. These evolving distributed energy resources have some challenges as they become more integral part of our energy future. We have to manage multi-direction energy flow, integrate with legacy systems like HVAC, make new energy systems resilient to emergencies like floods and fires, deal with new cyber threats linked to being connected to the main grid at all times, and achieve combined optimization of different buildings to ensure that demand matches available supply. Energos is developing an end-to-end IoT and Edge AI platform, which forms intelligent nodes on this evolving distributed energy system, so that both producers and consumers of energy can buy and sell energy as a service. Large commercial and industrial enterprises consume nearly 50% of the electricity that our planet produces. Several progressive businesses have already set up definite goals for carbon reduction and sustainability. They're also setting up their own renewable power, local energy storage, and EV charging infrastructure for employees and customers. Many businesses are seeking to reposition their brand image with more sustainable products and practices. On the other hand, energy services companies, energy retailers, and oil and gas companies are seeking new ways to serve their customers with a mix of low cost green power and other digital services which can add value to the business of their customers. At Energos, we have created end to end technology to support these very needs of energy consumers and energy service providers. Our consumer customers are large multi site businesses like food chains, petrol pumps, convenience stores, and EV charging depots, while as our energy services customers are utilities, oil and energy companies, and other services companies. Our solution is simple: make each energy consuming and generating asset intelligent by adding an AI model on top to run it at the edge. Our AI specializes in reducing consumption of heating and cooling loads while removing hot and cold pockets. It also automates the energy flow of solar, storage, and EV charging points. The uniqueness of our platform is that both energy consumers and energy service providers can build services on the go as they build the new distributed infrastructure. Our advantage is that we provide a secure digital environment for future prosumers to add value in a safe and reliable way. For Energos, the opportunity around the globe is to connect hundreds and thousands of such sites, creating a network effect of sharing data, sharing learnings, sharing information, and sharing energy. Starting with forming intelligent nodes, it will bring us closer to a larger vision of extending this network effect to form a single planet-wide mesh which forms an energy platform to make the evolving distributed grid participative and resilient for all stakeholders. I am a repeat entrepreneur with a successful exit in the past. Anis, our CTO, has previous experience with a German energy company. Jean-Claude is ex-Panasonic and leads business development and go-to-market strategy. Together, we have the combined experience to take this platform global, starting from India, and change the energy landscape for our world. If you are a large energy consumer or a service provider, do reach out to us on email or from our website for more information on how we can serve you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a wonderful, insightful presentation on network of nodes which enable participative and resilient energy grids. Thank you very much, Rajesh. Next, we will move on to my presentation. Just a brief introduction about myself. Max Narasimhan. I've been in the energy space for over 20 plus years, both in the US and back in India. Worked in South Africa, Thailand, Malaysia as well. as part of energy deployments through one of the larger companies. Right now, focused on distributed energy generation and efficiency improvements in the generation side and the consumption side.
Really, thank you very much for joining in. I'm Max Narasimhan, joining in to represent Grid Chill Technologies and PlaySolar. We are here to talk about real estate as a renewable energy powerhouse. Even after 300,000 years of human evolution, we are stuck with archaic energy generation and distribution systems. Discoms lose up to 25 to 40% in their operational expense in a fairly predictable and avoidable fashion. There is a lot that can be done in this area. Supply and demand management issues do exist in a big way, and there is peak demand for which there is a very high cost. These are existing issues that are getting solved slowly but surely. Like, for example, solar as a renewable energy resource has evolved, which has reduced the overall cost of consumption of production, but it still has its own set of inefficiencies. In terms of generation side, there's dusting, shading, line losses, conversion losses, etc., which leads to 7 to 15% of the total energy generated. Predictably comes with its own supply and energy demand challenges, because the production is during the daytime, whereas consumption could be early morning or steered more towards late evening. Limited options to use at location or store in batteries, or to sell to grid at very low prices, do exist thanks to the net metering efforts that have been going on with several government entities. But this leads to 25 to 35% energy wastage, which I want to talk to you about and how to minimize this. GridChill and PlaySolar have evolved into a peripheral and integral innovation company, leading to solutions across the board on all aspects of generation and consumption, including lead generation for closing a solar order and executing using drone survey integration, automatic layout, permit package automation, etc. Digital QA platform while the project is being constructed, and remote monitoring and control platform, as well as an automated solar panel cleaning solution, CleanSol and CloudSol, and an asset management solution to go along with it. In addition to that, on the consumption side, we have HomeSol and SolidTrade. HomeSol is our demand response at a breaker level, using optimization on how the energy is being utilized, and SolidTrade is our blockchain based distributed ledger based solution for peer-to-peer energy trading, for trading the excess energy to your neighbors. Now, here's a look at a brief peer-to-peer energy trading platform. Simply put, if you want to buy energy from either the state power or the community power, it can be directly done. In addition to trading your excess energy, how you're utilizing it within the premise, as well as traded to your neighbor directly using a bid-ask sort of setup using blockchain. Right. On the energy automation side, we have several solutions for both sort of as well as ease of use of energy from a scheduling standpoint as well as consumption standpoint. Right. So this is what we provide to our end consumers, as well as working closely with utilities. Using other projects, we have also deployed or in the process of deploying several solutions, which I'm here to talk about. So the number one being a REC trading platform, renewable energy credits trading. Right now it's done manually, and third party is verifying it. Instead of that, this is a solution which will enable no third party verification, automated verification, and a much lower cost. Second solution is a smart contract solution, where we enable a secure distributed ledger. Using IoT, we verify whether the asset is being utilized properly, maintained properly, and incentivize as well as charge extra for underperforming assets. Right. So this way you manage the asset using a smart contract. A third solution is a smart contract or smart socket. It's a smart EV charging solution with a socket with a mobile based payment for fast charging EVs. This way the auto energy is offset and enables hassle free mass adoption of EVs. The last solution is a demand response solution for batteries, using batteries. Batteries are able to be controlled to manage peak demand from a response standpoint, and automated priority is set up between solar, battery and grid. So this in a nutshell is what we do at GridChill and PlaySolar. GridChill is a Singapore based entity, and PlaySolar has been in existence for the last 5+ years. We have worked on several IP and product deployments in India and Southeast Asia, and we are willing to expand globally with this platform.
Now we come to the final talk before the group discussion. This session is from Kiran Murthi at GrowthFile. So Kiran is a pioneer in digital transformation, setting digital goals, designing people processes and organizational structures around data, and setting KPIs and incentives to drive performance. Kiran is a good friend of mine, and we are happy to have him and see how he can help us integrate all of the above set solutions into one platform and provide that. Thank you very much, Kiran, for joining us. The floor is yours.
GrowthFile is a facility management system on the cloud. It essentially simplifies day-to-day operations by collecting data on the cloud so that monitoring and response can be centralized. FM requires complex coordination across people, resources, on-site. There are many manual systems and processes on-site, like registers, logbooks, physical audits, which increase the coordination cost and management costs. We want to make this process, and also raises concerns on compliance, like health, safety, and reputation. We want to remove the complexity of facility management for property owners using AI. There is an employee app which collects data as it happens, which includes GPS-based shift monitoring, QR codes for workflows, training videos, checklists, logbooks, maintenance ticketing systems, and an AI-based decision support system which essentially pushes alerts and data at the right time to the right people, thereby ensuring 100% compliance, including e-invoicing and payment on the system for everybody, including vendors and employees of vendors. Our basic app is a very simple experience which combines what people are used to typically on the phone, like GPS, QR scanner, videos, rating systems, reminders, etc. We also have a management system that vendors can use to improve efficiencies in sourcing manpower, technical training, performance tracking, better control and coordination, and even invoicing and payment collection. Essentially, our principle is to ensure that execution happens locally at each location and the communities around them, but monitoring and remedy happens globally at a central location, thereby improving workflows and efficiency across the value chain. We see GrowthFile as a platform which will essentially create a runway for further technology adoption in the real estate sector, including IoT, circular economy concepts, trading in energy, renewable energy, and even PLC-based monitoring systems, etc. People are a critical part of the whole real estate ecosystem, and by bringing them into the platform and by enabling automation and connection with every other system, we are creating a platform that can scale and bring in new technology, which is very critical for improving efficiency and hence profitability at the real estate sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Kiran, for the wonderful presentation on GrowthFile. Now it's time to get the team back together as a full team and have a Q&A session on what the takeaways are.
from all the talks that we've heard so far.
What should the audience expect from this session overall?
So there is a economic aspect which Naren brings in. There's core technology that Rajesh brings in, and understanding of solar. That's a part you bring in. I'm going to value add in terms of how to connect all this using a people layer, because frankly, real estate is about people. You don't want to walk into fully automated empty building. So there is a lot of people aspect of it, and that's the part that I'm going to touch. So in that sense, it's not a pure tech conversation. It's actually a 360-degree kind of a connect, which gives you a wholesome approach, which is new in that sense. It's not just new technology. It's not like cutting edge PLCs or automation or economic. It's actually mixing in a real world way in which we see it getting implemented.
Makes sense.
It gives you a realistic perspective, I guess, in some sense of what the future of real estate is going to look like.
Correct.
Yeah.
And gives you all of the elements along with that.
Yeah, otherwise, because energy saving, sustainability, eco, renewables, all these are nice to say. Enough technology guys speak about it, but slightly making it more practical in terms of actual is what I think. I mean, I've been listening to you guys, and this is what I hear from you guys talk about.
Yeah. No, makes sense. Makes sense. So one question I would have for you on that is, right, I'm shooting off the hip here, but for a new building that is fresh design, yes, you can bring in circular economy design aspects into it from the design. What about pre-existing buildings with pre-existing infrastructure? Some of it like old HVAC that Rajesh is covering, right? His presentation, right? So, so that sort of thingy, what is your recommendation on how to incorporate circular economy features? Can it be a bolt-on afterthought?
Absolutely. So the bolt-on afterthought, again, the modular design principles, again, one of the other things that I cover in the presentation is the whole concept of modular construction. When you're looking at, there's a concept of prefab units for construction in general, although I understand that's more for the newer construction, but there's no reason that that design principle could not be applied to bolt-on features like whether it's solar installations or other renewable energy features, which could be bolted onto existing buildings in a manner that does not have to look at a complete revamp of what the design structure originally is.
Got it. So even in the material aspects, I think that will be the easiest segue, right? Material parts will be the first ones to implement in a bolt-on solution, right? How circular economy can come in, in terms of the use of the right materials that are added on, right? Additional materials that are added on.
Right.
Let's go back to what's in it for them, right? How do they implement circular economy in their setup, right? In an existing setup, right? What is the I mean, can we have some quick wins that will right? Those are the types of questions that people will want. Everybody wants to get into the circular economy. It will make sense financially, and it would make sense for them to make money while cleaning the environment and avoiding waste, etc. Right? So how do they make the first start? What is the first baby steps you would recommend?
So the first steps are always along the lines of resource recovery, in terms of those are the easiest. The reason why sustainability and circular economy overlap at the waste management part of it, which is where there is not a significant amount of infrastructure or design that needs to be incorporated, but there are some fairly clever ways in which that material could be reused and recovered. So there is a potential case study that could be covered in the form of this material called eCore, which is basically a technology that was developed in the US and then expanded across to Europe, which looks at cellulose fibers that could be taken from roughly any kind of source, whether it's coffee grounds, paper, all of those materials, and using a process that only includes just basically heat, pressure, and water, looks at refurbishing that into alternatives for particle board, MDF, into the material construction industry. So essentially, it could be something as closed loop as the waste material that's coming in from one specific office could be turned back into material for that office itself in a truly circular fashion.
No, that makes a lot of sense. The other question I have is also this whole the circular economy piece. You also have the logistics. What is the setup needed logistically to enable circular economy? Because
So,
you've got is there a reverse logistics of reverse purchase of waste material that needs to be set up? That's a very important area that needs to be covered, I think.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the infrastructure that is necessary for enabling a truly circular economy in that sense requires a lot of thought into where the how the assets are managed. Now, obviously, when you're looking at business models like product as a service, that it gets baked into the design of the product itself or the model, in the sense that you'll always have, let's say, an intermediary in the form of, as compared to a traditional model where somebody's just selling you a product and then forgetting about it. There will always be an intermediary in a product as a service scenario who is responsible for extending the life of that product to the extent that is most practically possible. But in order to enable that system as well, there needs to be a significant infrastructure in place to track where those goods are. So logistics is one part of it, but just along with that, when you look at things like IoT, it also becomes a very, very critical aspect of managing those assets, making sure that you are aware of the presence as well as the material health of those items. And then that loops back into the idea of being able to collect it for resource recovery and then potentially refurbishing and remanufacturing them into the future.
Yeah. No, makes sense. And one thing to add in the whole circular economy piece is also recycling of solar assets, right? And people
Absolutely, absolutely.
yeah, because there's a ton of silver, aluminum, copper, and of course silicon in all these materials that are used, and they're all 100% recyclable, right? And that's the big even after 25 years and 80% of the performance still left, the rest of the materials can be recovered for 100% value, and that's an area that makes it truly renewable.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then, I mean, when you're looking at OpEx models in that sense, which is, I mean, again, one of the models which is very an obvious application of product as a service, it just naturally makes sense for one central player to maintain the ownership of those assets in a manner that enables that recovery at the end of the 25 years, as opposed to something where it gets effectively just abandoned on a solar farm somewhere where nobody's really taking responsibility for the recycling of that. So you will have organizations like PV Cycle in Europe and other organizations around the world who are responsible for basically the recycling. But it always makes sense to look at a model where that ownership is retained in one central place rather than just gets distributed across geographic locations.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, right? Rajesh, on your effort in providing these AI nodes that are distributed across the world and connecting them, and ability to connect sellers and buyers of energy, right? And also in your ability to transact and add value on top of just sale of energy, right? So where are you in that journey from a time frame perspective, and how do you see yourself 2-3 years from now, 5 years from now?
Yeah, thanks. So we started Energos in 2015, and we looked at the changes that are happening in the energy industry, and moving from centralized power plants to more distributed and green, renewable-based energy system. And we also saw that while there are grid scale renewables like wind and solar, which are grid scale being set up, but also a critical mass of behind the meter renewables coming up, which is like rooftop solar. Also, we can see the trend that storage, energy storage, is becoming more and more affordable.
Right, Rajesh, I think you're talking a little bit about the battery piece, right? How battery is critical, and how you're working with enabling the integration of batteries. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Yeah.
Yeah, as the energy system is going distributed and more behind the meter rooftop solar is coming up, local battery storage is coming up, and then new loads are coming up like transport is merging with electricity. There's projection that 30% of all transport, new transport, will become EV by 2030. So in 10 years, if 30% of our transport is becoming EV, that's a huge load coming into the electricity system, and that's a distributed electricity system. So now, with the intermittent nature of renewables and with these new moving loads coming in, you need higher behind the meter control of legacy loads. And the biggest legacy load is HVAC or air conditioning and heating and cooling loads all over the world. And so first you need to have high level of control on that. As against the earlier BMS, building management systems, or which are control based, where you set a temperature, you set a time, and you set a schedule, and you can control that. Here with AI, you have the possibility to set up learning models based on real-time weather conditions, based on available intermittent supply at that time, based on the learning from equipment health, so on and so forth. And so by adding AI at each local loads and at each local behind the meter sources of energy, you can create a very good shared learning model for the distributed energy system. Now, if that infrastructure can be built, then I think it becomes very complementary to what you are trying to do, Marx, where you are trying to, make energy transactions possible, where people can buy and sell. So both the buyers of energy and the sellers of energy can have very high degree of control and visibility, and a very strong data available on what is the usage pattern, what is the and build services on top of that. So this is what we are focusing on in Energos. And of course, we have to look at who is the first mover. And so we are going with very large global organizations who have carbon reduction goals at the forefront of their sustainability agendas. So we are looking at those people because they are the ones who are taking initiatives. They have large loads, behind the meter loads. They are investing in renewables and probably also setting up EV charging infrastructure. So it makes sense to first work with them and build these nodes, and then come backwards, going all the way to utilities who want to provide these services to these large commercial customers.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Sure. So, Max, just in terms of what GrowthFile is trying to enable in terms of solar energy and making it more accessible to the communities as well, I was just wondering if you want to just give us an idea of the trading part of the energy side that GrowthFile is also looking at.
Sure. Yeah. So if you look at it, right, if you divide the virtual areas of operation into two, right, one is on the generation side, operational efficiency of the energy, of the way in which the energy is generated on the rooftop. As prosumers grow, there's more and more distributed rooftops, and they're less and less managed properly by a centralized asset. We need to enable the local players to actually focus on the efficiency and automatically improve the efficiency losses come because of the distributed nature of the systems. So that's what we've got CloudSol, which is the remote monitoring platform, which enables that CleanSol, which is the automated cleaning solution. And then even while deployment, how to find neighbors nearby that are energy consumers, and how to properly find the right customers for the trade of energy is what we are enabling. And then combining that with the energy optimization, which is the HomeSol, how the consumption is, only if the consumption is optimized, then you know exactly what the excess is. You're willing to do it.
Right.
Otherwise, it's a very sub-optimized trading platform. And that's where I think the combination of HomeSol, which is the optimization or demand response solution, built in, coupled with what the utility wants. Sometimes the utility wants the power demand happening right now. Can you turn on your batteries to enable storage of that of the excess energy during the day, and give me that access during peak hours while the duck curve is happening at the end of the day, right? You guys are familiar with the duck curve, where from, let's say, 4 p.m. to 6 p.m., there's a huge increase in demand, which leads to quick turn on of peaker power plant, right? That's where the battery storage distribution makes a lot of sense, and ability to trade that at the optimal price depending on the demand, right? During the duck curve hours, the demand may be very high for local requirements of power, right? And if you distribute that rather than depending on the old model, which is a centralized source which is accessing and providing energy, and have failed multiple times. You see all the power cuts all over India, and anywhere in the world, there is significant excess capacity needed with all the losses that are being added onto it because it is at a distributed location, right? And you have a centralized source of energy. All that what we are trying to enable. And the trading piece is a very critical piece, like you pointed out, Naren, where once optimized usage is there, then you can trade the excess. And that happens in a simple sort of a distributed ledger system where the excess energy is traded and meter readings are adjusted accordingly.
That I think that provides a very good perspective on, again, what the future of energy consumption and even production from a distributed sense is going to be looking like.
Right. Any other questions for GrowthFile and PlaySolar?
So, what do you think about timelines, Mukundan? Do you see how soon or how far away are we from solar energy playing a significant role in overall contribution in energy production?
Very, very good question. That's very, very geography dependent, right? India, for example, is late in the game. It's ramping significantly compared to others. Germany was way ahead of everybody in terms of solar deployments, including renewables taking up 40 to 50% of the total generation. And they've had, complete renewable energy days in the last year during lockdown, right? So clearly, it's really geography dependent in terms of where that transition is happening, and that's why a global entity can only deliver this value, right? And in terms of energy trading, there's a lot of other things that policy dependent as well. Some policies are more flexible compared to others. Indian policy is just starting to evolve in terms of more distributed assets and also privatization of the energy service providers. That's coming up in a big way, which will all enable trading to go faster.
As a follow-up question to that, do you see, so for example, international financial organizations like the World Bank, etc., have driven a lot of policy standardization across geographies, like for example, sourcing, contracts, funded deployment, etc. Do you see that happening in the solar space to sift out, file away the regional imbalances that are currently there in adoption?
There is already some pieces of it enabled. On the tech side, obviously, there is the IEC standards that have been enabled, which are accepted globally. And of course, IEC and UL standards. UL is a US-based standard. Those standards are already in there. In terms of ability to trade, what will be the optimal range of prices, etc., that's very local, depending on what the demand and supply is. And that's where there is a lot of arbitrage that's possible. And a good party who manages that, like a independent blockchain that manages that, adds value, right? So that's where it makes a lot of sense, right? The standards are evolving. This is the right perfect storm where all that is happening. The standards evolve.
Okay. Yeah. The question I was asking was essentially about lending. So all real estate runs on loans, right?
Yeah.
And all loans are governed, especially if it is to the real estate sector. Mm-hmm. And frankly, globally, the funding organizations are increasingly becoming aggregated. So there are central global funding organizations which fund practically projects everywhere in the world. Whether it's a metro station, whether it's a bus, whether service, whether it's a real estate mall. The funding organizations are increasingly becoming centralized. If funding is getting centralized, like funding is able to influence policy in terms of contracts, outsourcing, buying, etc., in national geographies, and funding also influence the need to do solar as a prereq for funding.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Now I understand your question better.
Correct.
See, like for an example, I'll give you an example of how that centralization is happening already. Most of the utilities in Southeast Asia are funded by this organization called ADB, Asian Development Bank, right? So right now, in fact, this week's news is Bescom, the utility in Bangalore, got funded hundreds of millions of dollars from ADB for infrastructure innovation, right? So that sort of thing is already happening in the renewable energy space. And if in terms of incentivizing for renewable energy, you take BlackRock as an organization, a funding organization, they have mandated right now that if you don't have a renewable energy focus, you will not be funded. It's as simple as that. So they have taken, there's a lot of other investors and VC communities that are evolving, focusing a lot more on funding for renewable energy projects. And the key is in any renewable energy projects is the break-even period, which has to happen between 3 to 5 years, depending on what you're adding on, and how quickly you can break even, and also produce the energy for the rest of the 20-25 year period, which adds additional value to the end client, right? That all those are enabled by centralized investing, as you're saying. People like ADB and BlackRock are enabling such deployments in a mass scale. Yeah. So on your journey, connecting people with real estate, right? So people are the integral part of real estate already, right? So how does one integrate all of these above solutions, circular economy, Rajesh's Energos, the IoT platform, the nodal network platform, and either PlaySolar or GridChill's, energy trading platform, etc. And each of them have their own set of operational expertise requirement, plus how to manage these assets in a real time once they are installed in the O&M phase, operational maintenance phase. So do you have any thoughts on how to put this all together into your sort of platform?
Yeah. So frankly, we have focused on the people aspect of real estate. We believe most commercial or even residential properties are about many people coming together to work there. These could be OEM manufacturers, the maintenance crew, the daily operations crew, the security crew, the developer himself, the lenders on the platform. A lot of handshakes happen on a given day for net asset productivity. So in that sense, it is not centralized in terms of management or operations. So that's one of the biggest observations we have on the real estate side, and that's essentially what we are focusing on. And a lot of this is outsourced. So there is a handoff between one entity to another entity and their employees and their employees. So people come together across entities, across functions to work and deliver an experience around real estate. More we add technology into this, it doesn't get simpler, it actually gets more complicated from a people perspective. More handoffs, more touch points, more entities, more functionalities coming in. And so we realized we need a generic data channel or a data pipe, which is friendly for people to use, so that people can focus on their tasks, but it pictures or it gets completed in the overall sense. And that's essentially what GrowthFile wants to do. So in that sense, we see whether it's sustainability, whether it's energy efficiency, whether it is IoT, whether it's any of these technologies, for them to be successfully integrated into a real estate kind of ecosystem. A platform which connects people is I think one of those little glues that bind things together. We see ourselves as an enabler for the rapid adoption and deployment of such technology.
Excellent.
So salient point, sir, I'm saying we see people as an integral part of running anything. And we see additional technology or newer technology coming in requires more integration with more kinds of people. Hence, we see a need for a glue layer in between which connects people so that developer, owner, operator, vendor, staff, OEM, maintenance, engineering, all of them can focus on their jobs while the overall property objectives are met. So So I'm saying that that's the insight that we had, and that's what we are focused on. So we see ourselves as an enabler for new technology, including sustainability, environment, energy saving, IoT, automation, etc., to come in, whether it's any kind of building. So
Yeah.
that's a summary.
Because each of them have a lot of interactions between the people, right? Let's say Naren enables his circular economy piece with a particular client of his. Who's going to put it together? The people, right?
Absolutely.
So similarly, if Energos adds their IoT node and gives them access to the data in terms of how they can better utilize their energy, or we come in, PlaySolar and GrowthFile comes in with their energy trading platform, and how is this all going to be put together in a people-friendly platform, right? And that's where I think Kiran's GrowthFile company comes in, and the piece about training as well, and operation and maintenance of each of these components put together in one platform can be accomplished only through an integrative platform like what GrowthFile is built. So one more aspects that will tie all of these four presentations together is how the distributed adoption is going to take place, right? So if you look at energy as a piece and adding circular economy, right, it will happen somewhat through governmental sort of interventions in some cases, but mostly I think the awareness aspect is grown to such an extent that large corporations, ones that Rajesh mentioned, are all looking at enabling this in a big way into the way their business is run, right? With interventions from huge investors and funders of projects like BlackRock made a statement, right? They want to fund people that are focused on renewable energy and circular economy pieces in place. That's a huge deal, right? How do we tie all this together? I think the key is the right business model that will enable all these pieces to come together in one platform, right? The business model will evolve with time, but it has to involve large corporations and their employees, right? Who live nearby, right? So that way they can incentivize their employees to deploy renewable energy assets, batteries, lithium-ion based storage solutions, and incentivize them to do so. And that way they solve their biggest problem, which is retention, right? In a large sense of the world, the large companies are driving people off of each other, right? So and sort of a retention mechanism is essential for them to build a more sustainable solution, and bringing it all together by enabling, let's say, waste management solutions, right? That the employees get some points while doing that, and also financial incentives while doing that, and large funding organizations can channel their money into that kind of a solution, working with these corporates. What do you guys think of that?
I think it makes a lot of sense, because even when you're looking at circular economy models, you're also looking at localization to some extent in terms of creating these mini ecosystems, so to speak, where whether it's material, resources, or all of those could be looped in a manner which retains that value. So when you're looking at the real estate ecosystems or otherwise, where people are trying to create those the retention within that that circle, so to speak, it's a great way to just make sure that that system perpetuates itself rather than something that gets broken and rebuilt every single time.
And the break-in will happen with the right business model, right? I mean, let's say Energos goes in there with a corporate entity and proposes their sort of IoT solution, which manages their branch offices in various. I mean, I'm sure that's part of the business model that Energos is doing. But then if you add the people piece with what Kiran is doing, right, and the circular economy piece, as well as the trading aspects where the employees' assets can be traded directly to the entity. The employee sitting in the office, renewable energy is being produced at home with no use for it right now. And if we can enable a direct trade of that back into the corporate, that really is a very, very interesting way of looking at things, I thought.
Yeah, I agree. Frankly, incentives for every player in the value chain, whether it's the investor, the funder, the operator, the maintenance guy, everybody, and the people, that whole incentive structure falls in when things come together like this. And I think that's one of my key takeaways from this conversation today. And I mean, it's been very revealing in that sense. Yeah, that's.
Sure. So it's interesting when Kiran is focusing on people, because people and habits is the thing that is the most difficult to change. We may talk all these big things about the need for the circular economy or the need for decarbonizing electricity, but hey, just because now we have to green the energy system doesn't mean I'm going to change the way I will consume energy, or just because water is scarce, or I'm not paying higher for scarce water or things like that. So I think whether one is a corporation, whether it's a building, whether it's a small shop, or whether it's an individual consumer, habit change is going to be the most challenging part of the entire sustainability and energy transition. And to enable that, I think one of you mentioned about how fund aggregation is happening. I think there's leadership at different levels. The financing bodies are definitely showing that leadership by facilitating aggregation. And a lot of bigger stakeholders who are like technology companies, you can see cloud technology companies facilitating a lot of digitization of one of the last industries to digitize, which is energy and sustainability. You can also see, organizations as traditional as utilities wanting to initiate change in the way they manage their power plants, their new renewable resources, the way they look at aggregation and virtual power plants. So they're also looking at digitization. And I think the last in the entire value chain, which is the consumer, down to the last consumer, is going to want to be served. So hey, I'm not going to set up I'm not spending money for solar on my rooftop, but one of you can come and install. I'll give you my roof,
Mhm.
and you need to sell me green power, cheaper than the coal power that I'm getting today, and you need to give it to me reliably. And then if there is surplus, you can take it ahead. And this unit matrix will multiply at larger levels. And I think that is very it is challenging. And that is the thing we have to understand, that the consumer finally wants to be served. He wants green energy. He'll buy an EV car, but he's not going to do it if you make it inconvenient or expensive for him. He's going to do it only if that transition is free and beneficial. So if he's also making money from the rooftop that you install, then hey, go ahead and install it. Something like
Yeah,
this.
I think I think that those are the business models that have evolved already. The virtual power plant, PPA model, etc., is already in place, where the end user or the energy consumer doesn't have to pay for it upfront, right? So that's the model that works, and it leads to different things. One, where the price of the energy, as you know, in India is right now dropping because of solar deployments, right? So under 2 rupees kilowatt hour for energy, and that perception is already flowing into the residential guys and saying, hey, the residential guys at a very small scale are asking for very low PPAs. So it's a double-edged sword. So we have to be careful about that. But then with scale, in an aggregated manner, those numbers are still possible, right? At a very low financing rate. That's the key. Yeah. Anything else? Any last words from everybody? So go ahead, Naren. What are your key takeaways in one sentence or one word?
One word, I think it's collaboration. I think it's going to be one of the key things that it's going to be necessary. It's one of the underpinning principles of the circular economy, as well as the fact that you're going to have to work together with technology providers, the people on the ground, and the people who are coming up with innovative solutions to bind everything together. That's basically the future of real estate. That's the future of circular economy. It's essentially what's going to take us ahead.
Excellent. Rajesh?
For me, the one word is prosumer. Energy consumer and energy producer both are going to become prosumers. And so the consumer is also going to generate and sell energy, is going to demand more services and which make his energy supply reliable, and he wants it at very affordable prices.
Excellent. Kiran?
So for me, it is uh, incentives. I think economic incentives play a critical role, and that's more I hear about it, the more it's clear. Um, Technology for itself, sustainability for itself, savings for itself, community employment for itself. More than anything else, economic incentives which bind all this together. So that's something which we'll have to go back and add focus back into the whatever ecosystem we're building.
Excellent. Now, for me, it's resilience, and I think that speaks in terms of people as well as energy, as well as all the technology that's evolving. Uh, it needs to be resilience. It needs to be resilient to all the changes, in perspectives, in people, in technology. Resilience is the one word for me.
Sure, excellent.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you, Max.
Thank you all. Be sure to put your comments on the chat section of Unisu, and we are here to answer those questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.